Good morning from Belfast. Welcome to this policy exchange event. Northern Ireland Beyond 100 as part of the centenary set of events in the coming days, weeks and months. We're very glad to be able to welcome Secretary of State, Right Honourable Brandon Lewis. We're going to have an in conversation and then going to throw open questions to the floor. Usual policy exchange house rules, no question too outrageous. You just have to state your name and organisation first, and also if you'd be so kind as to put up your virtual hand as soon as possible, because I know there'll be a lot of people wanting to ask questions, and we're keen to fit as many of them in from as many different points of view as possible. It's a particular pleasure for us at Policy Exchange because as a think tank we've played an important part in the debate on the Irish backstop legacy, many island economy, many other issues besides in this debate, and pleasure to be able to do so with Brandon Lewis, whom we've known from his period as Security Minister in the Home Office and a number of other ministerial portfolios which he's held. I suppose the first thing, Brandon, because so much of your time will be taken up on this centenary in the coming months, is do you think that Northern Ireland will be here 100 years hence? And do you think we'll be having this, our successors, as it were, will be having this conversation 100 years from now?
Look, without any prejudice to my neutrality position and role, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the interesting things with the history over the last few decades in Northern Ireland is people have had this conversation around the next 10 years and the next 5 years, regular times. I think for me, actually, the importance of 2021 and the benefit of recognising the centenary isn't just that it was something we agreed as part of the New Decade, New Approach deal, and I think it's important that we deliver on that, but also because particularly as we're coming out of COVID, it's a chance to really highlight and promote Northern Ireland around the world. And one of the things that struck me in my time here in Northern Ireland over the course of this year is the way that people in Northern Ireland have come together through COVID to support each other across communities, across businesses, has been quite phenomenal. I think as we go forward, that bodes well for the future. And I want to see people coming together and recognising at the same time as respecting and understanding the history of Northern Ireland. And we've got an independent group doing some work on that, but also looking forward, looking at what happens, not just in this year of the centenary, but beyond that. There's so much opportunity for Northern Ireland, whether it's in cyber, renewable energy, the creative arts, tourism and culture, and we should be promoting that around the world. This gives us an opportunity to do that, and that's for the benefit of everybody in Northern Ireland. And we want to do that sensitively and properly, but for the benefit of everybody.
And when you're not the first Secretary of State to have to deal with this issue, this perhaps more than just mood music, is why are Northern Ireland's unionists so often so pessimistic about their future and their future status in the Union, and why are nationalists so often so optimistic about, you know, their, perhaps as some might say, their day coming?
Well, I think, I mean, to an extent, I'd slightly challenge the premise of that, Dean, in the sense I recognise where the question comes from, but I think sometimes one of the challenges, when I talk to unionists, they're often hugely optimistic about the future. As I say, whether you're looking at the economic opportunities, we're ending the transition period in just a couple of weeks, and in January we'll be in post-transition period, and Northern Ireland has a phenomenal opportunity globally again, because Northern Ireland will be the one place in the world where if you want to trade as an integral part of the United Kingdom, but also trade with the EU, Northern Ireland is going to be the place to grow and invest and develop or base your business. And we should be looking to promote that and develop that unique selling point for Northern Ireland. I think actually, and the reason I make that point around the premise of the point, is I think one of the challenges that people often has, if you're looking at something different, something that doesn't exist, something that you're portraying a vision for something very different, it can be quite easy to create a very emotive, powerful argument around that. And actually, as unionists, and I am a member of the Conservative and Unionist Party, indeed having been chairman of it, I feel strongly about the strength of the union, the importance of the union to all parts of the union. Actually, to an extent, you're talking about the status quo. And I think the challenge for those who want to continue and are passionate about the unionist case, it's actually how do we explain why unionism matters today and the benefits of that going forward. We've seen a lot of that actually through COVID, the support that the UK has been able to give across the United Kingdom, across all four nations, because of the strength of the four nations coming together, that unprecedented financial support. And even just in the last few weeks here in Northern Ireland, I've been able to announce further funding, a 900 million increase in the grant in the spending review this year, for another 400 million just a few days ago in terms of the economic development and benefits for Northern Ireland as we leave the transition period. That's unprecedented investment that beyond anything Northern Ireland's seen for a number of decades. We can do that because of the strength of the United Kingdom's economies together. Northern Ireland plays a hugely important part of that, and it's good for Northern Ireland, good for Northern Ireland people and businesses, but good for the UK as a whole.
When you look at just the questions, perhaps less around the substance for now, what you've been discussing economically and in terms of Northern Ireland as part of the wider UK state, is why, in terms of the unionist communal mood, is it so hard to get things across? I mean, if one thinks Thatcher after the Anglo-Irish Agreement, stating very, very clearly that when she's in heaven, Northern Ireland will, when she's long dead, Northern Ireland will still be part of the United Kingdom. Blair in '97, his first big speech as Prime Minister in Northern Ireland at Balmoral Showground, saying that Northern Ireland will still be part of the Union, even, at the end of the lives of the youngest waiters and waitresses there present. Your own remarks last week, there seems to be, with the unionist community, a difficulty in getting that message across. You wouldn't be the first Secretary of State to have encountered it, but and you've been here a brief period. Just interested in why that's hard to get across.
Well, I think, again, you're talking about effectively the status quo. I think part of the challenge that myself and colleagues have got to rise to is around actually portraying what this means in the future. So, as I say, if you think about it, quite often, even this morning when I was talking to some media outlets, some of the questions come from the point of view of, how difficult this is going to be. Actually, I think there's real opportunity for Northern Ireland going forward. They were talking about that in the context of leaving the EU. And as I've said, I think there is a massive opportunity because of Northern Ireland having this unique position in the world to trade as part of the UK and with the EU. And that's because Northern Ireland is part of the UK. That position as part of the UK is going to give Northern Ireland this unique opportunity, and one that means businesses can invest more and grow. That's important in the private economy, because one of the challenges in Northern Ireland is we want to see more people in employment, more people in good jobs in the private sector. Historically, even before COVID, it was about 27% of the working population in Northern Ireland worked in the public sector, as opposed to 16.5% across the United Kingdom as an average. That means there's opportunity for the private sector to grow and to develop. And as we're seeing the benefits of the growth opportunities for people like Holland and Wolff, we've just seen a phenomenally positive news and a good deal with Bombardier and Spirit. We're seeing the cyber sector grow between the universities, and obviously Catalyst in Belfast become globally leading. There's some really exciting things happening. And we've got to do, I think, the job of selling that around the world, and often reminding ourselves of what is here on our doorstep, how exciting it is, and what phenomenal global leading industries we have got here in Northern Ireland.
And in terms of getting that message across, just in the and that sort of people have talked about in the UK, in UK terms, in terms of UK national government, a whole of government approach. You've got a situation where groupings like ESRI in Dublin, stated that your living standards per capita higher in Northern Ireland than in the Republic. That's a fact perhaps obscured a bit by the fact that in the Republic, that sort of position is the strength of their position is altered a bit by multinational profits, being taken account of as part of GDP. Graham Gudgeon, Chief Economic Advisor here at Policy Exchange, and of course known to many in Northern Ireland, his work at the Northern Ireland Economic Research Centre and as Special Advisor to the Prime Minister, has pointed out that per capita expenditure 121% compared to here in Northern Ireland compared to that in GB. And I'm just wondering, again, it's the same question, but it seems that the boulder in a Sisyphean way gets pushed to the top of the hill and then rolls back down. How can that, perhaps it's a message, a question of conveying the message, how can that be brought across? Why are those facts so rarely as it were, conveyed both on both sides of the Irish border, in GB, and indeed in the wider world?
Well, again, I think this comes down to we need to be probably a bit lesser reticent about promoting what is happening across the United Kingdom and what the UK government is doing here in Northern Ireland. Certainly, see, part of my job is to be clear about fighting to get what we need for Northern Ireland. As I say, we've just over the last few weeks been able to announce unprecedented investment, and we've seen over this year the strength of the UK Treasury's ability through the Barnett formula, meaning that not just the furlough scheme and business support grants and things like that have been centrally driven and delivered by the UK government, but also about 2.8 billion of support for COVID for the Northern Ireland Executive. But on top of that, as I say, we've just in the last few weeks secured a 900 million uplift in the spending review. I was able to announce last week the 400 million to invest in Northern Ireland to see benefits as we come out of COVID and as we leave the transition period to boost and drive the economy here in Northern Ireland. And that's on top of the 650 million we announced just a couple of months ago for Peace Plus and the Trader Support Service to prepare for January. It's a huge investment. And the Prime Minister's been really clear about his determination. We as a government have been clear about our determination to level up across the United Kingdom. That, I think, those numbers highlight how determined we are and genuine we are about delivering on that. And I think we've got to make sure we're clear that we're able to do that because Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, because we are passionate about making sure Northern Ireland benefits. As you say quite rightly, Northern Ireland per capita public expenditure is higher than the average for the UK. And we understand Northern Ireland, we want to see it continue to level up and grow. And I think there is a big opportunity in that. We've got the connectivity review coming. That could be really beneficial, not just for Northern Ireland, but everybody on the island of Ireland. If we get that connectivity review right and that work delivers in the years ahead, that connectivity between Northern Ireland and mainland Great Britain is also a benefit to businesses in the Republic of Ireland as well. So this is about making sure that all our islands can grow economically together. And obviously we will continue to ensure that we invest and see growth here in Northern Ireland. And you know, the culture here, the tourism, the experience for people when they come to Northern Ireland is, I would argue, second to none. It's an amazing place with fantastic people and such exciting business opportunities. I think we'll see more and more of that recognition, and probably globally as well in the next few years.
In terms of both questions of intercommunal mood and expenditure, are you, as you look at it now, Secretary of State, obviously with residual reserve powers, are you surprised at the length and cost of the so-called legacy issues, such as Operation Canada, just one example that's attracted much attention? And does it promote genuine reconciliation?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I mean, it is complicated issues. There's still a huge amount of unknowns out there. There's a lot of victims and families of victims who still don't have information from things that happened, obviously, in the Troubles decades ago now. So I'm not surprised that it's complicated or expensive in the sense of there is so much for people to work through. And Operation Canova, I think, has actually been an example, and the team who are leading on that have been able to secure information, working with families. I think has been, from the conversations I've had both with Operation Canova and a couple of the victims groups, has been a really positive experience. I think one of the things for reconciliation is about getting information. And what I hear from civic society more and more is that desire to have an understanding of what really happened, to get that information. And we've still sadly got 3,500 deaths where we want to get that information out there. And I think that understanding and information is an important part of reconciliation. Taking time to do that right, I think, is the right thing to do. It's why we will take our time to engage on the legacy issues linked to NDNA, as we pledged to do, because it is sensitive and it is complicated, before we come forward with any proposed solutions. And we need to do that with people across the communities. But I also think it's important, and I think inherent in the question, Dean, is how do we find a way forward? I think we have got a duty to find a way forward, always remembering what happened in the Troubles, doing what we can to understand it and get that information, but meaning that the next generation can start looking forward more and more and more, and reconciliation and victims are going to be at the heart of that.
And is anywhere in any of the tours you've done, any of the rounds you've done, and it might also include globally, because of course so-called history wars are an important part now of the geopolitics of Asia as well, events going back even further than the last round of Northern Ireland Troubles. Are there any models that you see as sort of potentially intriguing or viable that might, as it were, be a way going forward? means that it doesn't become, legacy doesn't become part of a renewed cultural form of toxic brew.
Well, I think it's important that we ensure that legacy is not something that is toxic for today. People need to be able to understand the past and be able to talk about it. It's always going to be part of the history of Northern Ireland, but also have that ability, as I say, to have the focus on moving forward to ensure we're investing in good education and good educational outcomes, that infrastructure that can let business grow. So people see they're getting a good health service. The health service in Northern Ireland done a phenomenal job this year in coping through COVID, but also that chance to, as I say, have a health service they can rely on, an education system that's going to give them the outcomes that means that students can go on and succeed in the commercial world and succeed and grow businesses. And that is always about looking forward and building on the piece that we have seen. Looking around the world is always useful to do. I think it's one of the things I think is important is to learn from the experience of the past and experience around the world to look at what is potentially appropriate and can be helpful here. But I think everywhere and everybody is unique. And we often use that phrase about Northern Ireland, and it's right in a positive way. So we've got to find a process here that works for the people of Northern Ireland, and one that we can deliver with our partners in the Irish government and overseas as well.
Thank you. And one part of perhaps that wider mix in the wider sense of the world was Gerry Adams' successful lawsuit for the terms of his internment after 1971 and the events during the early part of the Troubles. And there was a lot of discussion in UK Parliament, in GB and beyond, and policy exchanges, legal experts, Jonathan Sumption, Robin Butler, a great many people who haven't pronounced much on these matters and really expressed their concern about that lawsuit. I think one thing which is interesting to many people is, will the government now legislate, as it were, to prevent?
Well, I think it's too early to give you a straight answer to that, Dean. We're having a look across government because it covers across a number of departments in government. Look at the ruling and the outcome of that court case. Look at the details, the implications of what that means before we make any final decisions on that. But it's at the time I was quite open about that. Obviously, the outcome, the decision was one without, with all, we can respect a court decision. Doesn't mean we're pleased with it, and obviously we're disappointed in the overall decision the court came to. But we've got to, as I say, have a look through the findings of the court, work that through government in detail before we can make any final decisions on what, if any, the next steps may be.
And never shying away from the difficult issues. And as I say, no question should be off limits. And that applies to the audience, perhaps to a moderator as well. It's just in terms of there's much talk about the equality agenda here over many years, and there's been elements of resolution to that. Others have continued, bits of that have been perhaps more controversial. Of course, there was the recent controversy over the funeral of a prominent Republican whose people were in the Republican leadership and others were perceived to have violated the distancing regulations around the funeral. In other words, prompting the thought that there's one rule for them and one rule for everyone else in the province here and beyond. And I'd just like you to reflect on that. Is there any serious chance of the equality agenda going through in a commonly accepted way when it is seen to apply to the vast majority, but not to apply to certain privileged sections of the community?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to prejudge the outcome of the police investigation into that, and that's still ongoing. I think when we look at equality, I'll answer that in two parts, if you'll bear with me, Dean. I think, first of all, there's been some really big steps forward this year, which I'm really proud that we as UK government have been able to take forward. First of all, around some of the changes with the regulations on abortion, with the changes actually even just last week on same-sex civil partnerships being able to convert to marriage. I think that's a big and important step forward. I'm really proud we've been able to deliver on that programme of work. I think when you talk about it, equality between communities and parts of communities, I think one of the things we've all learned through COVID, and we've seen this across the UK and across different sectors, even including in the media over the last week or so, with different people doing things in different ways. I think for all of us, when we're trying to explain to people why guidelines matter, what they are there to do to keep us safe, to keep people healthy as we work through this horrendous virus at the moment. I think for balance, it is important. We will do everything we can to follow the guidelines in order to have the credibility to say to people, you should follow the guidelines. But as I say, there is an investigation in this. So I think it's best I let the independent police do their work. But as I say, I think one of the things pre that and post that, I will say is credit to the Northern Ireland executive as a whole, all the parties actually. When you've got 5 parties in a power sharing coalition, it's understandable they're not going to agree on everything all the time. And we've seen that just in the last few weeks with the discussions they had around the change to the regulations. But they've found ways to work through that. And I think it's been a credit to the exec. They've generally been able to come together to make decisions that are in the best interest of the people of Northern Ireland, to show united front. And even after the funeral, the First and Deputy First Minister have been able to get back together, be out there in the public, giving a shared message about why it's important. And I think credit to the entire executive for being able to do that. But it is important that we understand that everybody should be treated the same and understand that that's how the rule of law works.
And much of the time of any Secretary of State is spent dealing with the United States and through the Troubles, post the Troubles, and obviously big change recently in America. Just was wondering how you see that change impacting on Northern Ireland, on the wider affairs of these islands, bearing in mind, as I say, there's a certain optimism among sections of Irish America, portions of nationalist Ireland as well, that the balance will have tilted politically and psychologically in their direction in consequence of the outcome of the election last month.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of engagement with US politicians over the last few months since I've been in this role, and actually for various reasons in roles before this. I actually think there's a big opportunity here because we've been very fortunate this year. The current president appointed a special envoy earlier this year, Mick Mulvaney, who's passionate and been really focused on things, spoke at Policy Exchange himself not that long ago, around Northern Ireland and the economic opportunities, and that's been really good. But what I think we will see going forward is we've got a president-elect who will be coming in next year, who's got a spiritual link to the island of Ireland, is interested in Irish matters. I think that means there's an opportunity for us to be able to work with our friends and partners in the US. After all, the UK has this special relationship with the United States. It's been there historically for a very long time. I'm sure will continue to grow in strength as our two countries work together on a range of issues, particularly around security and defence. There are shared agendas between the Prime Minister and the President-elect, particularly on climate change and our approach globally to that. So I think there's a real opportunity, and having a president who's got that interest in the island of Ireland, I think there is, as I say, there's an opportunity to work together to drive and see more US investment. And again, coming back to this point about the end of the transition period, if you're a US company that wants to trade with the EU and trade with the UK, and important trading partners, there's only one place to invest and grow your business, and that's here in Northern Ireland.
And coming back final question from me before turning it over to the audience and their questions. We started out, will Northern Ireland be here 100 years, and will our successors be having a similar dialogue on the bicentenary? And just interested in the light of the optimism on sections of nationalist Ireland and pessimism on part of a portion of the unionist community, in the Life and Time survey earlier this year, support for a united Ireland jumped from 16 to 22% here in Northern Ireland. Some made much of it. To others, it was actually a relatively small increase in support for United Ireland, considering Brexit, backstop, all the controversies associated with all of that. I'm just interested, are you just perhaps speaking in your capacity as a former chairman of the Conservative Party, doing a lot of number crunching as you do demographically, or as you did back then, does that increase strike you as significant or smaller than you'd have anticipated? What's your smell about that? Is it?
Well, I think first of all, obviously, the benefit of living in a modern democracy is people with all different views can make their case, and I have no issue with that, and I totally understand that. The same applies, obviously, to people with views on both sides of that debate. I have to say, at the moment, when you talk to people, and I talk to people across Northern Ireland, their focus at the moment has very much been on wanting to find a way through COVID, wanting to be ready for the post-transition outside of the EU position that the UK and Northern Ireland will be in. and wanting to ensure they've got good infrastructure, good schools, good health service, rather than on so much constitutional issues. Certainly the middle ground of people who are focused on those areas. And I think it's our duty to make sure we are delivering for those, and actually for everybody in Northern Ireland, ultimately, whatever their constitutional views. But I think you always have to look at these things. Remember, they are a snapshot. Any polls, we always say, whether it's at political level for a general election or local elections or even constitutional issues, they are a snapshot. But as I say, I think people have got a lot of optimism they can have around the future of Northern Ireland. And I think particularly, and obviously I had these questions regularly over the last few weeks from various discussions with media outlets around what the implications are for Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom, particularly post leaving the EU. As I say, I do think the opportunities as we leave the EU and the fluidity that we will see thanks to the great work done by the Joint Committee led by Michael Gove over the last 2 weeks, securing that outcome of the Northern Ireland Protocol, means that people, I think, in practice, when we move into the new year, will see things in a much smoother way than maybe they currently expect. And as those opportunities start to develop, because that unique place Northern Ireland will have, I would think that there will be a growing confidence in the fact that Northern Ireland is in a really strong, good position as part of the UK with those trading opportunities going forward.
And final thought, just this, related to all of that, the significance of Sinn Féin moving the call for a border poll from 5 years hence to 10 years hence, the timeline slipping. Just interested in you reflecting on that here at this audience today, the wider world listening in, people perhaps in the United States, Republic of Ireland for sure.
Yeah, and look, I think it's interesting, and I think it probably does recognise the fact that people want their politicians today focused on the issues that are affecting our everyday lives. And as I say, it's about jobs, education, health, infrastructure, etc. But I also think ultimately this is the future of Northern Ireland is in the hands of the people of Northern Ireland, whether it's the consent mechanism that we've obviously built into with the Northern Ireland Protocol, that people of Northern Ireland will ultimately decide if the advantages are strong enough to want to continue in that unique position in a few years' time. And the future of Northern Ireland is in the hands of the people of Northern Ireland. As I say, I think the position of being an integral part of the UK, trading in the way only that Northern Ireland can with the EU, gives it that unique strength of an economic position that means it's in a really good place going forward. And I suspect we can see it prosper in a way that people want to see continue in the years ahead.
Thank you. So we're open now to questions from the audience. As I say, if I could also ask anyone who wants to ask a question to put up their proverbial electronic hand. Also, if I could ask you, as I say, no question too outrageous, just reiterate your name and organisation just for the record. Robert from University College London, if you give your full name and organisation, please.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I'm Robert Hazel, a Professor of Government and the Constitution at University College London. And my question flows from the last part of the discussion, because as Secretary of State, you're under a statutory duty to hold a unification referendum if it ever appears likely that a majority would vote in favor of a united Ireland. And can I ask, what is the evidence on which you're going to base that decision? And would it help to have advice from an independent expert committee, as recommended by the recent interim report of our working group on unification referendums on the island of Ireland?
Thank you for the question, Robert. I mean, first of all, obviously, as you'll be aware, having done that report with the court case this year, that we've not set out, and the court agreed it's not appropriate for us to set out specific set of circumstances, but the overarching point you've outlined in the question, I don't think it would be particularly right for a Secretary of State to take advice from one particular set of organisation or group, but equally, the Secretary of State can take advice, and I welcome comments and input on a range of issues from people from all different backgrounds and parts of society. So I think on any issue, whether it's the constitutional issues or wider issue like legacy, as Dean and I were talking about, I think it's important that we are alert to the ideas that people have, the suggestions people have. I'm always willing to listen and talk to people about these things, but I don't think it's particularly appropriate to be taking a particular single set of advice on any given issue, particularly. On the unification border poll issue, as I say, as the court outlined this year, that'll be a matter for a Secretary of State to take a view on if they feel that those circumstances are right. But as we've been talking earlier on, I have to say I have no sense of that being the case at the moment.
Thank you. And next question, Arlene from Fermanagh. I think I can guess which Arlene it is, but if you'd be so kind as to state your name and organisation, there is perhaps more than one Arlene, but I think for the purposes of this occasion, over to you.
Thank you, Dean. It's Arlene Foster, First Minister and Leader of the DUP here. Thank you for the discussion today on our centenary. And I noted some of your questions, Dean, about Irish nationalism and their belief in themselves. But of course, Irish nationalism and republicanism is wedded very much to historicism and the belief that events will deliver political outcomes for them. Whereas 2021 actually demonstrates the poverty of that, given that since I was a child, which is a few years ago, there's been many predictions of Northern Ireland's impending demise. The question I wanted to ask Branton was around the economic commitments in the new decade, new approach, which of course came into being at the beginning of this year, and just how he's going to roll those out, because I very firmly believe that just like the Northern Ireland of 1921, the Northern Ireland of 2021 has some great assets, whether that's in cybersecurity, fintech, in our television industry. All of those industries are very forward-looking, and so we will move beyond 21 into better economic times. And I just wanted to know what your timeline was around some of those economic announcements.
Look, absolutely. And on the latter part, obviously, I entirely agree with you, Arlene. I think there is huge opportunity there. So, yes, we will deliver on the NDNA commitments. We'll be working with yourself and the entire executive around exactly how and where that financial support goes. But, of course, on top of that, I announced just last week when I was at Ballymena looking at Rybus, the £400 million of new and extra money that we'll be investing and looking to invest in all that to boost those very industries. I mean, I was in Ballymena because you've got the world's first double-decker hydrogen electric bus, highlighting the forward-thinking and innovative plans for renewable energy here in Northern Ireland. I know you're keen and the executive are keen on a hydrogen hub. I think that's the kind of thing we should be looking at. I think you're right around creative arts, the TV and film industry, which takes people in so many different sectors, whether it's carpenters, electricians, as well as actors and technicians, a whole range of expertise that feeds into that industry, that also then brings tourism to see that phenomenal hospitality industry that we've got here in Northern Ireland. And you're right, absolutely right around fintech and particularly cyber, where there is globally leading work in terms of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and you've got the biggest US insurance companies having their cyber and software bases here in Belfast, the great work being done by both universities and indeed Catalyst. So really keen to be getting forward to delivering on those things and outlining some of the details, as you quite rightly say, Arlene, around where we're going to invest that money and how we invest that money. And we'll be doing that in conjunction with the Northern Ireland executives. So we'll be working with you on that to get that money out there and see the positive benefits of that as quickly as possible.
Thanks for that. Ruth from London. I think that's a wider demographic for this purpose. Would you state your name and full name and organisation?
I don't have an organisation. I'm Ruth Dudley Edwards. I'm a journalist and an historian. And I come from Dublin. I live in London. And I'm devoted to Northern Ireland for reasons I don't fully understand. But it's also because I have seen heroism in Northern Ireland of a kind I think we don't understand in the rest of the United Kingdom, or indeed in the south of Ireland. My concern is how hard it is for me to explain to unionist friends that they are not deliberately being sold down the river, because of course that's how they see it. I mean, you're absolutely right about that, Dean. And this is where the pessimism comes from. I mean, I've spent several weeks saying, I'm sure Michael Gove will pull a rabbit out of the hat. And he did, but it wasn't a fully armed and legged rabbit, as it were. There is still this feeling that this is betrayal once more, and that they have been lied to once more. That's the view of unionists. The big problem underlying all this is that Irish governments are loudly pro-nationalist. British politicians seem to regard it as indecent to be pro-unionist. Now, I understand the problems about neutrality. I understand all that. But what affects it so much, and I think politicians don't get it in London, the only reason there wasn't a civil war in Ireland was because of the extraordinary courage of police and soldiers. And hundreds of them died and thousands of them were injured. And they're demonized and accused of collusion today. They are having their reputations trashed in Northern Ireland, in Southern Ireland, in London, in Brussels, in Washington. And Sinn Féin are meanwhile also rewriting history to make the IRA seem victims and the security forces perpetrators. And I don't get the feel, and certainly unionists don't get the feeling, that the British government is really, really engaged and energetic about countering this kind of pernicious propaganda. And I think that's absolutely vital, that really that every initiative you bring in has to be looked at from that point of view. Are you dissing the really patriotic people in Northern Ireland in favour of the people who want to destabilise the province?
Well, Ruth, I think obviously there's a fair few things in what you just said, and I'll try and cover all of them. Look, first of all, quite obviously the Secretary of State has a requirement around neutrality, but that doesn't change the fact that I am a member of the United Kingdom government. I am a member of the Conservative and Unionist Party, and as I said earlier on, having been chairman of it, I do feel strongly about that. I think we as the United Kingdom are stronger because of all four parts of the United Kingdom: England, Scotland, Wales, and importantly, Northern Ireland. I think actually, if you look at what we have done on the protocol, and what Michael's achieved is a really good thing. I mean, it means that Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom. Our customs union, our single market, the UK Internal Market Bill builds the structure of the UK internal market, means that Bushmills can compete with and show why it is better than the Scottish malt whiskies, Penderyn or London gin or even Norfolk whiskey occasionally, because it's part of that single market. I think that was hugely important. What we've done on the protocol and the work that Michael has done has been informed by businesses in Northern Ireland, the Business Engagement Forum, which I put together over the last period, has had businesses feeding into us, a meeting with myself and indeed other secretaries of state, including Michael and George Eustace, to talk about what they needed to see. That's what the command paper was based on, which was positively received, the guidance we put out, and the final decisions that Michael was able to secure with the European Union just last week to give businesses that certainty, to guarantee that unfettered access for Northern Ireland businesses. And we're determined to ensure that there is good free flow of products, both from GB to NI, as well as obviously the unfettered access NI to GB. We've always recognised legally over the last few years the single epidemiological unit of the island of Ireland in terms of the live animals and agri-foods. But beyond that, we want to ensure there's a really good free flow. And I think there is, as I say, I've said this a few times today, I think there's a real opportunity that in practice people will see over the next few months and indeed the next few years, where Northern Ireland has this unique position that it can benefit from and deliver on for the benefit of people across Northern Ireland. So I think there's big positive opportunities which we need to sell and we need to be clear about, not just so that people here in Northern Ireland can see the benefits of it, but so businesses can see that and understand that, so they look to invest here as opposed to anywhere else, so that they can trade around the UK and with the EU. Now, I think there's also, I think you judge people, I think it's always best by their actions. If you look at the decisions I've made this year, I think I've been pretty clear as a government about where we stand on a range of issues. I think actually we should be very proud of those who serve, whether it's in the police force, whether it's in the armed services, for our country around the world, and indeed those who are looking to protect life here in the island of Ireland, and obviously particularly here in Northern Ireland. I think we've got to be really clear about the fact the majority of people do understand that people are there to protect, the police are there to protect and keep us safe. Obviously we police by consent across the United Kingdom, same as we govern effectively by consent, but we shouldn't be, I think you make a fair point, we shouldn't be afraid of being positive about the good work that people do. We've seen even through COVID, the armed forces playing an important role here in Northern Ireland, even with all the sensitivities around that, with MACA, what they call MACA requests, people being able to get their care supported by through COVID by the logistical work of the armed forces. They play an important part. We should be very proud of that. Recognise the sensitivities of that, absolutely. That shouldn't make us any less proud of it.
Thank you. Next question, Ben from Belfast, if you state your full name and organisation. Ben from Belfast, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, if you give your name and organisation.
Ben, sorry, I didn't. It's Ben Laurie, Deputy Editor from the Belfast Newsletter. I didn't unmute. I do want to, Ruth Dudley Edwards asked a question that I want to return to that because you haven't really answered it. You've actually morphed a question about legacy into admiring the work of the police today and admiring the work of the army in what it does presently. If anything underlines the pessimism which was raised about before, it is the British government's apparent weakness on legacy. I mean, even this morning on Radio Ulster, you seem to be apologising and making clear that you weren't ruling out a public inquiry into one Trouble's murder out of 3,700 dead. And I'd like to push you further on this point about legacy, that it's a crisis. You were even seeming to praise Canova earlier, which has become a massive operation, that it's the unionist view that it's grossly imbalanced, and put aside the PSNI that you referred to there, the ex-RUC view that it's grossly imbalanced. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit more about that being one of the root causes of unionist pessimism.
Oh, well, look, in terms of the decision on the Finucane case, I was merely outlining a matter of fact, and it is a matter of fact that we've got a court commitment in the UK government to have an Article 2 compliant process, and we have been clear we will do that. But the next step of that is the police investigation, the police ombudsman's investigation. We want to let them do their work. That's just a statement of a matter of fact around the decision that was made in that particular case. I think more widely on legacy, I think it's also important, I should have said in the answer to Ruth's question as well, Ben, I think it's a fair point in that we've also got a commitment we had in our manifesto. We are determined we would deliver on that. We've done that for the armed forces for their work overseas in the overseas bill. I've always been clear we will deliver that equivalence here in Northern Ireland for those who served here in Northern Ireland as well. I think it's important we do that to ensure we end this cycle of vexatious claims that too often lawyers do very well out of and unfairly treats those who served to protect life in country. And I think it's important we do deal with that for those who are serving under civil authority as they effectively were through the Troubles here in Northern Ireland. So we will do that. But I want to see if we can do that within the context of the NDNA commitment we have got to find a way forward more widely on legacy. And that means working with all communities to find a way through legacy so that people can start to look forward. And I made the point actually on the floor of the House of Commons in a statement around the Finucane case in response to a question there. I absolutely recognise we've got to make sure we don't have a hierarchy of victims. We've got to make sure we recognise there's a huge number of people out there who are still seeking information and indeed justice for crimes committed by terrorists. That's part of the complexity and sensitivity of finding a way through legacy. And I want to make sure we're engaging widely on that. We paused that over the course of most of 2020 after the NDNA commitment because of people being rightly, both governments, the Northern Ireland Executive, the UK government, and people more widely focused on the COVID crisis. But as we're now moving to a stage where we're starting to see the start of the end of that crisis, hopefully with the vaccine coming through, we can start to engage on that. I met with Victims Group just last week to listen to their thoughts and views on this, and that's something I'll be continuing to do as my team will over the period ahead, so that we can look to find a solution on legacy that works across communities, but absolutely recognises that there's a huge number of people out there who suffered at the hand of terrorists who still want information and still want justice as well.
So just picking up on Ben Lowry's point there, and you talked about the view of that it was from his perspective a largely one-way traffic in terms of concessions to Irish nationalism. Just how a little more detail from your perspective on how the 2018, let's call it the Theresa deal, which was very top-down, which excluded the Assembly, was the British government, Irish government, EU, imposing the terms of trade, as it were, on the province of Northern Ireland, and then the difference between the deal that was secured on Boris's watch, which gives a role to the Assembly, including in the 4-year review. Just a little more detail on that, and just be interested to hear your view of that, because Ben raised important points.
Yeah, it does. I think it's a key thing. And actually, there's another side of this as well, which is there's a number of people and partners involved in this process around legacy more widely. It's not just the UK government. It's not just people in Northern Ireland. The Irish government have a role to play as well. And, you know, the First Minister, quite rightly, I know, has written to the Taoiseach around having that conversation around the Irish government opening up and giving more support. People feel strongly about the Robert Nairac case and how do we take that forward and get that information for people. And I've written, as I say, I was quite clear when the Irish government wrote to me around the Finucane case. Actually, we should be working together on a range of cases and actually making sure that we get that information out there, whether it's from whatever sector it is. I think transparency is important. But you're quite right. I think in terms of the deal around the Northern Ireland Protocol and Brexit, I think one of the key things that often is missed is that the long-term decision on how this works in Northern Ireland will be one for the people of Northern Ireland. That consent mechanism, that ability to vote on this in 4 years' time means that people in Northern Ireland, through elected representatives, will be able to decide if this is working for them in Northern Ireland and to choose whether they want to continue in that role or revert back to being purely part of the United Kingdom without that link into the EU. But as I say, I suspect that as this develops in practice and we see the opportunities that having that part of the UK and the ability to trade with the EU gives to business and to business investment here, I suspect people in Northern Ireland will see the benefits of that and want to continue it, but it will be a matter for the people of Northern Ireland. I think that's a really important thing. It's all about consent and Northern Ireland having control of its own destiny.
Question now from Francesca from London. Could you give your name and organisation, please, if you're there and can come on the line and unmute yourself? Francesca, can you hear me? Can't hear you. I'll move on to the next question. Ray from Dublin. Could you give your full name and organisation, please? Ray from Dublin. Do we hear anything from Ray?
He's very got a mute button issue.
Are you on mute, Ray? Hearing nothing from you. Last chance. Francesca, maybe, if we go back to you, if you're able to unmute. And can I ask you a little, since use chairman's prerogative, just a further second, a little more on the equality agendas you see it emerging in the language space and other domains of what some might call cultural contestation. Describe how you see that playing its part in reconciliation.
Yeah, but I think part of moving forward is also delivering on promises that have been made. I think the New Decade, New Approach has a range of things we should all be working to deliver on. I'm certainly from the UK government point of view, working through New Decade, New Approach and the commitments in there to make sure we're delivering on that. And as I said earlier on, financially, we're obviously also going beyond that now in light of COVID and wanting to give the support to benefit from the opportunities post transition period. Language is one of the things that was agreed in New Decade, New Approach. It's something that people feel, particularly the nationalist community, strongly about. It was an important part of the agreement to get Stormont back up and running. So I think it is important we deliver on that. But obviously it goes beyond that as well. I think it's about recognising and understanding culture. The Royal Irish Guards, I think, their motto is in Irish. So I don't have an issue with language. And actually, when I was a minister in local government, I still remember negotiating and part of the deal to support financially the Cornish language being developed and delivered in Cornwall. So I think it's one of the New Decade, New Approach commitments and agreements, and we should be looking at how we deliver that, obviously being sensitive to doing it in the right way, but we've also got a range of things we're doing across there for people in the unionist community as well, some of which we've already been delivering on. So I think it is about balance and just recognising that there is an agreement that brought Stormont back, and it's for all of us to make sure we're delivering on all parts of that. With the restrictions that COVID has put, the challenges that has brought in terms of capacity, but as we're moving out of COVID, using our best endeavours and efforts to deliver on the NDNA commitments properly for the people of Northern Ireland.
Thank you. And we've been blessedly free of technical problems, but maybe people have dropped off the call. I'd try again for a last bid for Francesca from London and Ray from Dublin. Can either of you here, can either of you unmute? The great silence of the deep dark. I think there's a humorous question there from is somebody is coming under a false flag there. So I'm going to pass over that question discreetly. Brandon, just because people obviously want to hear what you say. There's a global audience for this, what we're talking about today. Just a few final thoughts from yourself on the vision going forward 2021.
Well, look, I think it's going to be, we're coming to the end of that decade of centenaries, which have been handled, I think, really well and sensitively, generally, over the period. And I think as we look to 2021, it's about, I think, celebrating the people of Northern Ireland, the opportunities that Northern Ireland has as we go forward, but being respectful of all views of people across communities and understanding and respectful of the past as well. I think there is a really big opportunity to just promote Northern Ireland, everything it's got to offer. As we've touched on over the last hour or so, whether it's the cultural offer that Northern Ireland has got, the tourism offer that Northern Ireland has got, the promotion that's seen through cinema and TV and the creative arts, but also the business opportunity. We've got companies who are supplying airports around the world, competing with the Chinese in terms of their technology and particularly on artificial intelligence, that cyber work that we've talked about over the last hour, that, as I say, even the biggest insurance company in the US having their bases for cyber and software here, the growth of our own sort of version of Silicon Valley through Catalyst, the prominence and the growth of our universities, and particularly I've seen both at the University of Ulster and Queen's University, phenomenal research work and development work there with a great offer of students around the world. I think there's just a great opportunity to promote Northern Ireland internationally and globally as a place to do business, as a place to live, as a place to experience. And that's got to be a benefit to everybody in Northern Ireland. It's the start of the formation of the United Kingdom as we know it, and that's the United Kingdom that has prospered and succeeded. And even in the difficult period of 2020, as we've seen through COVID, it's the strength of ourselves as a union that's allowed us to put that support mechanisms in place that we have seen financially and for business and communities, and that allows us to ensure that we continue to make that investment. And I say that increased, sort of pretty much record level of investment that I've been able to announce over the last month or two for Northern Ireland going forward. And I think next year is just a chance to, as I say, promote Northern Ireland around the world, remembering our past, but looking forward to the future and the opportunities for Northern Ireland and the people and businesses of Northern Ireland as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And slightly, one last chance, if I can. I see the bid has come up, but maybe it's still not working. Ray from Dublin, just if we can have a last question, just sneak in one last minute if the technology will permit. Ray, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Ray. Glad you've come in.
Okay.
But almost the last word from you.
Okay.
State your full name and organisation, please,
Sure.
to the audience.
Ray Bassett. I'm former Irish ambassador to Canada and also a research fellow with Policy Exchange, and somebody who's very, very keen on good Irish-British relations. My question is, the last few years have brought strains in the relationship between Dublin and London, and the experience of history is that when the two governments tend to work together, it helps stability and progress in Northern Ireland. Now, without asking the Secretary of State to be anyway undiplomatic, I wonder, has he any advice to Dublin on how to get the Irish-British relationship back on an even keel once Brexit has been completed? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the way you put that, Ray. And obviously, somebody having been the ambassador to Canada will understand the benefits of securing and our logic of looking to secure a Canada-style agreement with zero tariffs and free trade for us with our partners in the EU. But look, to the wider point, Ray, you'll know from your role and involvement, actually, the relationships, I think, between the Taoiseach and the Prime Minister, both the current Taoiseach and the previous Taoiseach, have always been very good. I've had good meetings and conversations with the current Taoiseach as well, and with, to understand now, with Simon Coveney as well. And those personal relationships, I think, are important. It's a relationship that means, and actually a good friendship between partners is one that means that even where the things you disagree on, and obviously the UK leaving the European Union has created a tension with our partners in the EU, just the simple fact that we're leaving. We've had to be negotiating a way to leave that's good for the United Kingdom, whilst they're obviously negotiating what's good for the EU. And hopefully we'll find a mutually beneficial way through that over the next couple of weeks as the talks continue. But a good friendship and good partnership is one that continues even where there are things you disagree on. And the fact that you're friends and partners means you can disagree and do so constructively. And I would say to our friends and partners in the Irish government that we want to continue having a really positive relationship. We think it's beneficial for us all to be working closely together for the benefit of the whole of the European Union, as well as the UK and the people of Northern Ireland. And I think those relationships can continue. And in the year of the centenary of Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom as we know it, we can continue to develop and work on that. And we'll all have the chance to see that over the next year or two as we go forward, as we've left the European Union and continue to work together positively as partners. And I would just give a quick plug at the end of this, that if you want to know more about what we're doing, and as the independent historical panels feeding in, and as the Centenary Forum group are doing their work around some of the specific events that will be next year, you'll be able to see that by clicking onto the website that we're launching today as well, which is about our storyinthemaking.com. And you can have a look on there at all of the information that we'll be publishing.
And picking up on Ray's point and your points about good relations between the Republic of Ireland and between the United Kingdom, there's a chunk of opinion formers, perhaps in Dublin 4, some would describe as part of the national bourgeoisie, that wanted to see Britain given a caning in the Brexit process. In fact, now the government of the Republic of Ireland, which has responsibility for stability in their portion of this island and for the stability of the Irish economy, is actually being helpful in the context of trying to find a deal. Far from them lining up with those who want to see Britain being punished, they're actually trying to find a balanced accommodation. I'd be interested in your reflections on the sort of, the responsibility of an Irish coalition government in the context of the sort of very tense talks that we're now finding these islands in.
Yes, no, I think the Irish government obviously do recognise that, because there is obviously we share a border between the UK and the EU through the Republic of Ireland. I think it is right, and I think they do see the importance of getting a really good mutually beneficial outcome. And I think, hopefully, the discussions over the next couple of weeks will do that. And I think our friends and I are an important part of that in helping get the EU to understand the importance of the Good Friday Agreement, the Belfast Agreement, and why that's brought peace and prosperity. It's about having no borders north-south, as we've always been committed to, but also east-west as well. Is just important to make sure we are supporting everybody in all communities and recognising Northern Ireland's place as an integral part of the United Kingdom, which is what the protocol itself was set out to do, and to make sure we were not disrupting the everyday lives of people in their communities. And I think the Irish government have a part to play in that. I think they do recognise that. And as I say, they've always been very clear about wanting to have a really good, strong relationship and a new and fresh bilateral relationship with the UK going forward. And that's something I'm sure we can do, and it's in all our interest to do so. And there's always been very good personal relationships, and there are between the Prime Minister and the Taoiseach, and I've had good relationships, as I say, with both Simon Coveney and the Taoiseach as well. So I'm sure we'll continue to see our partnership and friendship prosper in the future.
Thank you, and Brand, thank you for appearing on Policy Exchange platform today. Been very important contribution to discussion of the big issues in these islands. As I say, Policy Exchange has played a very important part in that as Britain's leading think tank, not least ranging from legacy issues through to the island economy, through to the future of the Union. And we'll be continuing to do that. This is one part of our contribution to that process. And we look forward to welcoming you all back very soon to continue the dialogue further. Thank you. Over out from Belfast.